So we went to the cinema the other day, and I brought this sock that I was already knitting on. This is my plain stocking stitch sock, and that's where I think the end of the foot is, where the afterthought heel will go in. Normally I put a waist yarn in, but I didn't do that on this sock because the first sock I knitted in the cinema while we were watching the Bond film, and I knitted way past where I should have put the waist yarn in. So I went to the cinema again, and I'd got to about there, so I knitted that much. I did actually put it down towards the end of the film because I realised I'd knitted it too far. So I had counted the number of rounds that I've knitted on this sock between the end of the toe down here and the start of the rib up here, and I remembered that. So before we went to the cinema, I counted how many rounds I'd knitted from the end of the toe down here to where I started at the cinema up here, so that I knew, and I actually put my row counter on so that I would know how many rounds I had knitted. But while we were at the cinema, it got dark and I wasn't really looking at my row counter because I couldn't really see it. I would have had to get my phone out. So towards the end of the film, I suddenly kind of grabbed the finished sock out of the bag, and I measured, and I realised that I have knitted nearly 30 rounds too far. So that's the finished sock, and that's how far the second sock has got to. And I should have started the rib about there. Hang on, about there. So I'm going to count exactly how many rounds I need and where I need to rip back to, but I probably need to rip back about 20 rounds. But I don't want to just pull the needles out and rip it all out without needles, because stocking stitch on socks is quite small stitches, and it can be difficult to pick the stitches back up again without them unraveling. So I'm going to show you another quick way of unraveling several rounds of stocking stitch without just pulling your needles out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, please leave them below this video, and thank you very much for watching. Okay, so I'm going to start unripping, and I need to unpick that many rounds. I counted back here because that's directly above where I got the marker down here. So I counted on the first sock from the marker after I finished the toe up to the marker before I started the rib, counted those number of rounds, and then I did the same on here. That marker is at the end of the foot where I want to put the heel in, and then so I put a marker in there, and then I just went to the beginning, counted the number of rounds that I worked in many, which I think is 13, and then I just counted down 13 here. So what I've actually done is with the needle I'm using, so you could use a spare needle for this. I'm using the same needle because this is actually 2.75mm needles, and I normally knit socks on 2.5mm needles, and I only have one 2.75. So I thought if I use a 2.5mm needle, I'm worried that I'm going to forget to change back to 2.75. So that's why I just used this needle. And I just went into the first stitch, so I counted down here and rounds I need to unpick, and then I just put it into that stitch. And then you could actually just go all the way around like this. So that's the right hand leg of that first stitch, then that's the left hand leg, so I want to skip that and go into the next strand. So you're doing like every other leg, so that's the right hand leg of the next stitch, then I skip the left hand leg, so you're basically going in under every other leg, all the ones that kind of lean slightly to the right. So you could just go like this all the way around. I find it very difficult in stocking stitch to make sure I stick to the same row. It's a bit easier here because the yarn is variegated. So even though it won't be pink all the way around, it will probably be a different color than the row above. So that makes it a bit easier, but I find it difficult sometimes with stocking stitch to see the same row, especially if it's all in the same color. So what I tend to do is, and I do this with lace knitting as well, but I don't do so many rows at a time in lace knitting. But with stocking stitch, I will quite often do a bunch of rows, but with lace patterns and other stitch patterns, I might just do 3 or 4 rows. But I'm going to do the whole thing here. So I picked up 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. let's do one more. So we got 10. So I picked up the first 10 stitches. So I've used the needle that was attached to the back. So I'm going to take 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 stitches off my needle. So what you could do is you could pick all the stitches up, go all the way around, and then pull the stitches off your needle. But I'm going to do it as I go. So I'm going to unravel. One thing I will say about this is that if you do as many rows as this in one go, your yarn may get in a bit of a tangle because you can't actually wind the yarn back onto the ball until you've finished doing this. But there we go. So you can see hang on, I've got one more row to do. There we go. If it sometimes tangles a little bit, there we go. You just got to give it a bit of a pull to unravel all the rows. There we go. So those are gone right back down. So then I'll do a few more this time. So it's that pink one, then it's that one. So it's like every other leg. So I'm doing the right hand leg of all the stitches. So the stitches are now ending up the right way on my needle. I'm not that bothered if they end up twisted because I can always knit them through the back loop on the next round if I need to. So you want to, on the stitch, you got one leg that leans slightly to the right and one that leans slightly to the left. I'm trying to pick up all the right leaning legs. It doesn't really matter as long as you catch one stitch from each. That's the stitch I put the marker into, by the way. But you don't want to pick up every leg. You want to pick up every other leg. Right, hang on, I just got to make sure I'm picking up the right row. Sometimes you may accidentally pick up a row above or a row below. That's fine, doesn't really matter. You can fix it. Sometimes you may want to pick up like a row or two above where you want to rip back to, and then go and do the last row stitch by stitch. That works especially well if you have different stitch patterns. So if it's not all stocking stitch, so just had a bit of a hair there. So if it's not all stocking stitch, if it's rib, cables, lace, whatever, you might want to do like a row or two above and then do the last row or two stitch by stitch. So let's just see how many stitches I've got here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 18, 20, 21. And then we got, hang on, where are we? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21. So I've got 23 there, so I can pull the rest of those stitches out and then just unravel these. I could go all the way around and then unravel this at the end. Probably would be better actually, because I would probably end up in less of a tangle, but we have started now, so we shall carry on. Don't know what's happened there. Anyway. There we go. So those last two are on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I've got to put my magic loop in here, otherwise I won't be able to fit the needle all the way around. So those last two stitches I've picked up that I hadn't unraveled are from this side of the sock. So I've just pushed my magic loop through there just to make sure that I've got, if I don't have the magic loop around this side, it will be difficult to pick it up all the way around. Okay. So this side is a little bit more difficult because I got several rows here in green. So this will be a little bit more difficult. So hang on, that one, I think that's the row. This is why I don't like doing this way when I've got several rows in the same color, because I do find it more difficult to make sure I stick to the right row. It's easier to go a row above or below. It doesn't really matter because you can always fix that at the end. I nearly picked up both legs of the same stitch. If you do that, then it won't work. It'll just fall off your needle, because if I go under both legs of the same stitch like that last stitch, then you technically just putting your needle behind the stitch. So when you undo it, that stitch won't be on your needle. It'll just be sitting in front of your needle and it'll fall off. So that's not a good idea. So once I've unpicked this, I've only got the 30, I think it's 30 rounds of rib to do. It's a little bit difficult to see right at the end here because I got the navy blue and the dark plummy purple color, so it's a bit dark. There we go, that's the last stitch. So it is easy to accidentally miss a stitch. You do have to be a bit careful once you get all the stitches off to make sure that you haven't missed the stitch. So it's useful to have a padlock stitch marker, one of those bulb stitch markers, in case you missed the stitch, because then you can just pull it on. I haven't got one here. Right, so that's the last few stitches. So now I got first ones on this side. That's a bulb, what I mean by bulb or padlock stitch marker. If you have one of these and you miss the stitch, you find that you've missed the stitch or something, you can just put it back on there, put one of these through easily, and then it won't unravel. So these are the ones that where I've unraveled. There's something going on there, I'm not quite sure what, but here I haven't unraveled them yet. So if you don't unravel them, this is what it looks like, and then you can unravel. So I now need to just wind the ball of yarn up. And this is where, if you do it the way I did it on the first side, where you may get into a bit of a tangle, depending on how many rows you do. Quite often I will do like 3 or 4 rows, and then I will wind my ball up, and then I will do another 3 or 4 rows, and then I would wind my ball up, especially if it's lace knitting. If it's lace knitting, that's what I usually do. I'll do 3 or 4 rows, wind my ball up, do 3 or 4 rows, wind my ball up, because I don't like doing too many rows if it's lace knitting, just because of all the decreases and things. It can be a little bit tricky. There we go. So now I'll just have a quick look and make sure I haven't missed any stitches, because it is easy to miss a stitch. No, I've got all the stitches there. I haven't dropped any stitches. And I've got all the stitches there. So there we go. All the stitches on the front, all the stitches on the back, and I'm now ready to start my rib. So I've got to do, I think it's 25 or 30 rounds of rib. I need to count that as well. So hopefully I'll get that done this evening, and then I've just got to do the heel. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, just ask below this video, and tell me if you've ever tried to unpick like this, or whether unpicking several rows like that, or putting a needle into a row further down, whether that fills you with terror, and whether you rather go back stitch by stitch. If I was going to go back stitch by stitch, that would have taken me a long time, because it's a lot slower to go back stitch by stitch than it is to knit it. So probably it would have taken me, I don't know, at least an hour, if not longer. This has taken me 10 minutes. And that's with doing it on camera. If I was doing it off camera, it'd probably even be quicker. So, saved me a lot of time. Anyway, tell me if you've ever done this. What do you do when you have to unpick several rows at the time? Tell me in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please consider subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, then thank you very much, and please give this video a thumbs up. And thank you very much for watching.